Hello. Today I'll be analyzing the movie Punch Drunk Love for our Dismantling Stereotypes assignment. To begin, it must be noted that stereotypes are perpetuated in many ways and forms, but this presentation will specifically be discussing how mass media, like popular movies which are viewed by millions of people, can impact and influence the beliefs about people with disabilities. Punch Drunk Love stars Adam Sandler as Barry Egan, a lonely man suffering from an undisclosed behavioral disorder. His life is monotonous and depressing, until one day, through a series of unexpected events, his world is turned upside down. Barry must handle the ensuing chaos if he is finally to connect with the love of his life. According to the DSM-5 classification system, Barry seems to have a social phobia. Below are three distinct characteristics, but they all involve fear and anxiety of social situations, which can impair interpersonal or occupational functioning. Examples in the movie include Barry hiding when he first meets Lena, his extreme aversion to attending his sister's dinner party, and the way in which these stressors lead him to performing poorly at work. Since behavioral disorders rarely exhibit problems along a single dimension, Barry also displays many problem behaviors outlined by Quay and Peterson, such as conduct disorder, where he has violent outbursts throughout the film, motor tension excess, where he is always fidgeting and pacing, and suicidal thoughts, which he expresses in the film. In certain ways, the movie does a good job of portraying the actual phobia. Besides the aforementioned characteristics, Barry is older and may never have had his behavioral disorder diagnosed, and he also comes from an overcrowded home with a large family, 7 sisters, which could be conducive to the development of behavioral or conduct disorders. Although the film does a good job depicting a social phobia, the overall movie and effect is dampened by the many psychosocial stigmas it perpetuates about people with disabilities. The first, posited by Block, is the false idea that persons with disabilities are dangerous and consumed by anger and rage. Barry is constantly angry and violent in what could be considered normal settings, for example, the dinner party and at a restaurant on his first date. He is asked to leave both situations after resorting to violence. The next stigma is described by Longmore, highlighting a common inaccurate portrayal of romance and disability, where the non-disabled character often sees past the disability of the other person and has to convince them that they are worthy of love. This is not typically the case, as reflected by the real-life experiences of many men and women with disability. Barry is clearly very troubled, but Lena, who is non-disabled, seems to dismiss it all. She endures constant awkwardness during their encounters, was stalked to her trip to Hawaii, witnesses many violent outbursts, and eventually gets hospitalized after a car crash and assault, yet still unquestionably loves Barry. Lastly, the film perpetuates a few more psychosocial stigmas as described by Hayes and Black. First, building pity instead of respect for people with disabilities until they prove they are capable of overcoming extraordinary feats. In the movie, we pity and feel sorry for Barry, but are only proud of him when he finally confronts his foes and wins Lena's heart. The second is providing hope for rehabilitation through the individual's fight, reflecting the premise that disability lies within the person and it is their issue to solve. In the movie, his sisters say things like, "It's your fault. Why are you being such a pussy? You're such a bitch. What, are you retarded? What's wrong with you?" And then although Barry does want to see a therapist, his ideas are dismissed as weak, and it is implied that he should be able to get over his, quote, issues himself. Lastly is the myth of full independence, or that everything is going to be okay. Although convenient when telling a fictional story, it is not often this way in real life. It sets unrealistic expectations and can lead to a warped perception of what living with a disability could and should look like. Barry riding off to the sunset with Lena is an example of this. Overall, there are certain positive and negative effects on the individual level. The positive one being that this is an original story with top-tier actors highlighting a disability in the mainstream. However, it does glamorize violence and treats it without any real consequences. It has an unrealistic portrayal of romance and a happily ever after ending, and it portrays therapy in a negative light and suggests that individuals can overcome the disabilities on their own. Overall, here's my take on the film. There are parts of the movie that realistically depict someone living with a social phobia, and that this type of representation in mainstream media is good, but a majority of the movie is too flawed to really celebrate. Instead of diving deeper into Barry's character and depicting his disability with a full scope, the filmmakers promote a discourse of pity and only use the disability to conveniently reveal a plot of typical Hollywood stories. Thus, if using this movie as a teaching tool, I would tread carefully, only selected certain clips or segments. Here are the references that I used for the presentation, and thank you for listening.